Some people spend years chasing a vibration they already are. They wake up trying to feel high, to smile wider, to think better, to force gratitude into tired lungs. Not because they are fake, but because they were taught that alignment means emotion, that to manifest they must feel euphoric, that if the joy isn't loud enough, the dream won't come. And so they push, they suppress, they pretend. And in the silence of their rooms, when no one is watching, they wonder why it still feels like something's missing, why the vision doesn't land, why the universe doesn't respond. But here's the truth. Alignment is not intensity. It's not the thunder of excitement. It's the stillness where everything inside you finally agrees. Neville Goddard said, "You are already that which you seek to be." He wasn't inviting you to strive harder. He was reminding you of a forgotten posture, the inner stance of someone who has stopped pretending to be almost there and begun living from the end. Alignment isn't pursuit, it's remembrance. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from always chasing a better version of yourself, as if your wholeness was somewhere out there, waiting on the next affirmation, the next meditation, the next good day. But alignment isn't something you achieve by climbing higher. It's something you access by descending into coherence. Coherence is when your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, your inner self-image all say the same thing. Not louder, not happier, just honest, just aligned. It's not about thinking more positively. It's about feeling without contradiction. Dr. Joe Dispenza speaks of this scientifically, that the heart and the brain, when synchronized, emit a stable electromagnetic field, a literal vibration, measurable, repeatable, real. It's not about hype or hope, it's about frequency, tuned like an instrument to the reality you claim. Because your vibration doesn't rise when you think better, it stabilizes when you stop splitting yourself in half. You don't have to feel ecstatic. You don't have to fake high vibes to be a magnet. You only have to be sincere, to let your identity and your emotion meet in the middle. You only have to remember that the state of already having is available now, not through force, but through embodied stillness. So today, we begin from a quieter place. We're not going to add anything. We're going to tune, not louder, just clearer, like adjusting a string until it sings without trying. Because when your frequency finds its coherence, the universe listens, and it answers. It starts so innocently. You hear someone say, "Just raise your vibration," and you believe them. You want to believe them, so you try. You fill your days with gratitude lists, upbeat music, forced smiles and bright thoughts. You meditate with pressure. You visualize with tension. You tell yourself, be happy, be high, be light. But behind that light, something trembles, a quiet resistance, a tiredness you can't quite explain. And slowly, the joy starts to feel like a mask. The manifestation journey begins to feel like performance. And every time a darker emotion surfaces, shame follows. You begin to think you're doing something wrong, but you're not broken. You're just caught in a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that says feeling high is the proof of your alignment, when in truth, it's often a trap. Neville Goddard never told you to feel joy. He told you to feel the wish fulfilled. And sometimes that feeling is not excitement. Sometimes it's stillness. Sometimes it's quiet knowing. Sometimes it's relief. The truth is, real alignment often feels gentle, subtle, like slipping into something that has always been yours. When you try to force happiness as evidence of your spiritual growth, you resist your natural emotions. You build tension around sadness. You shame your doubts. And this resistance, not the sadness itself, is what creates incoherence in your field. Even neuroscience confirms this. Forcing an emotion activates the amygdala, the part of your brain that responds to threat. When you suppress how you really feel in order to vibrate higher, your body doesn't hear spiritual effort. It hears danger, it senses contradiction, and your nervous system becomes a battlefield between who you are and who you think you should be. But there is another way, one that doesn't require you to fake light, one that begins with being vibrationally honest. Instead of raising your vibration, try matching your identity, not by force, but by choice. What would it feel like to be the version of you who already has? What emotional signature would your fulfilled self carry? Not ecstasy, but familiarity. Not fireworks, but resonance. The key is not emotional volume, The key is emotional truth, because trying to feel joy all day is like holding a balloon underwater. The pressure builds, the energy tightens, and eventually, everything bursts. Real manifestation doesn't come from holding the emotion. It comes from becoming someone who no longer needs to hold it, because it's already natural. This is where we begin, not with the pressure to feel more, but with the willingness to feel what's real, and choose from there. When your inner atmosphere stops contradicting itself, your vibration doesn't just rise, it aligns, and the field responds, every time. Before a single thought crosses your mind, something else is already speaking. It's the breath you didn't notice, the heartbeat you didn't command, the posture you didn't control. Long before you start visualizing abundance or declaring, "I am," your body has already chosen a tone, a mood, a frequency, and that frequency is what speaks to the field. This is the part most people miss. They believe their vibration begins when they start thinking positively. But vibration doesn't begin with thought. It begins with energy. And energy begins with physiology. The way you sit, the way you breathe, the rhythm of your morning. All of it is already broadcasting a signal before your mind even joins the conversation. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains this in neurobiological terms, that over 95% of your daily energy patterns come not from conscious thought, but from subconscious programs encoded into your body. These are rehearsed states, emotional muscle memory, and unless they are seen and shifted, they'll keep choosing your vibration for you, no matter how many affirmations you say. This is where Neville's wisdom becomes more than philosophy. It becomes precision, because consciousness is the cause, but the body is the echo. And if your echo is still whispering fear, scarcity, or pressure, your outer world will mirror that, even if your thoughts are filled with light. So what if your alignment didn't start with the mind? What if it began with the moment you opened your eyes? What if, instead of checking your phone, you checked your frequency? You can ask yourself softly, before the noise of the day rushes in, what emotion am I rehearsing right now? Not to judge it, but to witness it, to bring it into awareness. Because the moment you become aware, you return to choice. And the moment you choose, you begin to shift the baseline. Your baseline is the emotional tone that plays beneath everything, like background music in a film, barely noticeable yet shaping the entire story. That music can be tension, or it can be peace, it can be anxiety, or it can be clarity. But whatever it is, it creates your vibration more powerfully than any conscious sentence you speak later in the day. The body leads, and when the body is tense, hurried, closed, the vibration follows. Not because you're wrong, but because the field is always honest. So the question becomes, what is your body saying before your mind says anything? When you start here, at the level of breath, presence, and posture, you reclaim the foundation of your frequency, and alignment stops being a practice you perform. It becomes a presence you live, quiet, grounded, real. You can say, "I am abundant," 1,000 times. But if your chest tightens every time the bills arrive, the universe listens to the body, not the words. Because the body speaks first, and it never lies. This is the law of emotional congruence. When what you think and what you feel are out of sync, you're not sending a mixed message to the world. You're sending one loud, clear signal of contradiction. And contradiction is what delays creation. Neville Goddard made it simple. To feel is to be, not to affirm, not to declare, to feel. When your feelings contradict your affirmations, the deeper current always wins. That's why so many struggle with manifestation, not because their desires are wrong, but because their inner state is speaking a different truth. You may be thinking wealth, but vibrating lack. You may be declaring love, while carrying the residue of abandonment in your heart. And it's not your fault. These emotional echoes are not proof of failure. They are invitations to alignment. Modern neuroscience supports this deeply. The limbic system, the emotional brain, responds faster than logic. Before your mind can reframe, your body has already decided whether it's safe, whether it's true, whether it's you. This is why it's not enough to think abundance. You must become the frequency of abundance. And that becoming begins with emotional coherence. So how do you move from contradiction to congruence? Not by pushing, but by breathing, by allowing the feeling of your desired identity to enter your body. and stay. Try this. With each inhale, imagine breathing in as the version of you who already has. Not future tense, present tense, not imagining, being. On the exhale, release the parts of you that still feel undeserving, not by fighting them, but by softening. Because when the body begins to feel safe in the new identity, the field begins to respond to it. And suddenly, you're no longer declaring abundance while vibrating fear. You are no longer speaking success while embodying doubt. You are congruent. And congruence is magnetic. Imagine a melody where the voice and the instrument are playing in different keys. It doesn't matter how beautiful the lyrics are, the song will still sound like noise. But when voice and music align, harmony happens, instantly. And that harmony becomes a frequency the universe cannot ignore. This is what real manifestation sounds like, a body and a mind, singing the same truth. If this message is resonating in your body more than your mind, it means you're remembering. Subscribe and keep tuning into the version of you who no longer doubts what's already real. There's a moment after the visualization, after the affirmation, when silence returns, and in that silence something restless wakes up, a part of you that starts scanning again, looking for signs, checking for results, measuring how close you are, and suddenly, you're not manifesting, you're waiting. This is the subtle addiction that no one talks about. The chase, the thrill of wanting, the high of imagining what's next. It feels spiritual, it feels powerful. But underneath, there's an emptiness, a quiet ache that never quite goes away because the vibration is no longer rooted in being. It's addicted to becoming. The science is clear. Dopamine, the chemical of pursuit, is triggered by anticipation, not fulfillment. Every time you imagine a future goal, you get a hit of excitement. But like any high, it fades. And when it fades, the only way to feel aligned again is to set a new goal. Visualize something else. Push harder. Want more. This is how even the most devoted seekers end up caught in a loop, chasing manifestations that feel meaningful at first, but hollow once reached, because they weren't created from stillness. They were created from craving. Neville Goddard offered a different path. He said, "Live from the end, not for the end." Embody the state of fulfillment, not the fantasy of arrival, because the wish fulfilled doesn't vibrate like hunger, it vibrates like peace. So imagine, not the excitement of getting, but the calm after receiving, the exhale, the deep breath that says, "It is done." Feel that. Let that be your baseline. Let that be your frequency. Because when you rehearse fulfillment, when you practice the stillness that follows the miracle, you become someone who no longer needs to chase. You've already arrived. Most manifestors become emotional gamblers without realizing it. They play with energy like a slot machine, hoping the next thought, the next vision, the next technique will bring the jackpot. But true manifestation doesn't happen when you spin the wheel. It happens when you stop playing the game. Fulfillment is not a reward. It's a state of being. And when you live from it, you're not chasing the vibration anymore. You are the vibration. You are the signal. You are the proof. And the universe, recognizing its own frequency, responds with absolute clarity. The more you try to become, the more you tell the universe that you're not yet there. It's a quiet contradiction built into so many spiritual paths. The idea that effort brings you closer, that if you just visualize harder, feel deeper, act faster, the manifestation will arrive. But energy doesn't speak effort. It speaks identity, and identity doesn't try. It already is. When you live in pursuit, even of something beautiful, you're vibrating with the frequency of lack. Not because your dream is wrong, but because the identity you've chosen to live from is one of separation. You're still reaching, you're still chasing, you're still becoming. But Neville said it with precision: you cannot desire what you already are. That sentence is not a mystery, it's a doorway. If you fully are something, you no longer reach for it. You live from it. And when you live from it, the world can't help but align. This is not philosophy, it's psychology. The Galatea effect, a principle known in behavioral science, states that your performance, your habits, your tone, your decisions, all rise or fall to match your self-image. You don't act according to what you want. You act according to what you believe you are. So the question is never, how do I attract more? The question is, who am I being right now? Identity is not repetition. It's embodiment. It's a decision made in silence, then lived with consistency. You don't need to say, "I am powerful" 100 times a day. Say it once and walk like it's true. Sit like it's true. Choose like it's true. That's where the energy shifts. Pick one "I am" a day, not to recite, but to wear, as truth, as skin. Let it reshape the way you breathe, the way you respond, the way you speak, not because you're trying to convince yourself, but because your nervous system is learning what's already real. Think of tuning forks. They don't run toward each other. They don't shout. One simply holds its frequency, and the other, if capable, begins to vibrate in resonance. That's how manifestation works. Not through effort, through stable identity. You don't attract by forcing. You synchronize by remembering. And when your frequency holds, without wavering, without begging, without pretending, everything around you begins to hum with the same tone. Not by command, by coherence. The 24-hour experiment, living one day as the fulfilled version. There's something powerful about one full day. Not a week, not a lifetime. Just one single day lived from the version of you who has already received. And yet, for most people on the path of conscious creation, even this feels rare. They read, they visualize, they affirm, but they don't live it. Not fully, not continuously, not without slipping back into the old story when life presses against them. But what happens when you stop studying manifestation and start embodying it, even just for 24 hours? Neville called it living in the end. A sacred experiment where for one day you refuse to rehearse lack. You decline to identify with delay. You withdraw permission from the past. And you walk, speak, breathe, and react as if the change is not arriving, but already done. This is not fantasy. This is initiation. When you live as your fulfilled self, even temporarily, you activate a kind of emotional rehearsal that begins rewriting your neural circuits. Your brain doesn't know the difference between memory, imagination, or reality. What it does recognize is repetition, and repetition is how identity becomes stable. So if for one full day you assume nothing is missing, not intellectually but emotionally, your energy field begins to organize itself around that new coherence. You feel different. You choose differently. You say no where you used to say yes. You relax where you used to control. You pause where you used to panic. And it's not forced, it's remembered. And what you'll notice is that reality responds, not because you pushed harder, but because you aligned longer. One day, not of trying, but of allowing. It's easy to think change takes time, but sometimes the deepest shift comes not from duration, but from depth. One aligned day can carry more power than a month of anxious visualization, because when you stop living as if you're almost there and start being the one who is, time bends, circumstances adjust, and life mirrors your stillness. This is the invitation, not to plan your whole future, but to try one honest day, a day where you no longer seek signs. You are the sign. A day where your vibration doesn't need to rise because it's already home. And that home is who you've always been. There is a rhythm inside you, older than thought and deeper than desire. It's not the noise of your mind, it's the pulse of your being, where the heart and the brain meet, not as organs but as instruments of frequency. Most people live in a constant dissonance between the two. The mind wants one thing, the heart feels another. And in the space between, their vibration fractures. But true alignment, the kind that changes your field, shifts your reality, and attracts what's already yours, doesn't begin in the mind alone. It begins in coherence. And coherence means unity. It means your brain and heart, your thoughts and emotions, your vision and your belief are playing the same song. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research shows this with scientific clarity. When your heart and brain rhythms become synchronized, your electromagnetic field expands, stabilizes, and becomes more powerful. You literally emit a new signal, not metaphorically, measurably. This is where Neville's teaching, "Feeling is the secret," reveals its full depth. Because the feeling he spoke of wasn't surface emotion. It was heart-centered embodiment. A state where your internal frequency becomes a living signal, not just imagined, but radiated. So how do you enter that state? Not through pressure, but through presence. Place your attention gently on the center of your chest, not to analyze, just to feel. Let your breath slow. Let your awareness soften. Recall a moment of deep gratitude, not to chase joy but to awaken truth. Gratitude is not a tool. It is a frequency that unlocks the door between the mind and the heart. And when that door opens, your entire field begins to reorganize. Now bring to mind the version of you who has already received, not the fantasy, the embodiment, the felt sense of completion. Let that feeling merge with the rhythm of your breath. Let it move through your chest. Let it settle into your belly. Let it become your now. Because the heart is the speaker and the brain is the playlist. You can think all the right thoughts, but until the heart amplifies them, the vibration remains faint. But when they unite, when your belief and your emotion walk together, the song of your soul becomes audible to the universe. And the universe always responds to coherence. It doesn't need more emotion. It needs more unity. When the heart and mind become one, manifestation is no longer a process. It is a pulse, a resonance, a remembering. Not something you do, something you are. There's a quiet moment after you decide to change, when something inside you resists. Not loudly, not obviously, but subtly. A heaviness, a distraction, a sudden need to fix something else first. You might think it's fear or failure or a sign you're not ready, but it's not. It's simply the old self, dying. Neville Goddard described it as dying to the old man, not in drama, but in transition. When you step into a new identity, the previous one doesn't vanish. It echoes. It tries to reclaim the rhythm it once knew, not because it's malicious, but because it's familiar. And familiarity to the subconscious feels like safety. What many call sabotage is often just recalibration. Your system is adjusting. Your nervous system is being asked to feel safe in a new frequency. And that process isn't always smooth. It's not proof that something's wrong, it's proof that something's changing. Neuroscience explains this through the process of neural pruning. Old circuits begin to weaken when new ones are rehearsed. But before they dissolve, they flare. One last attempt to hold on, that's the resistance, not a block, a goodbye. So what do you do when it comes? You meet it. Not with force, not with frustration, but with awareness. You notice the thought that says, this isn't working. You hear the voice that whispers, you always fall back. And instead of believing it, you breathe. This is what I call neutral acknowledgement. The power of letting resistance arise without naming it wrong, without making it your identity, without feeding it more story. Because awareness, when free from judgment, becomes alchemy, and resistance, when held in clarity, begins to dissolve, not by battle, but by truth. It's like tuning a guitar. When the new string tightens, the old notes clash. The sound feels off, even uncomfortable, but that dissonance is not the end. It's the path. You keep tuning, gently, attentively, and eventually, a new harmony appears. That harmony is you, without the past speaking over your present. So if you feel the resistance rising, honor it, witness it, but do not become it. You're not regressing, you're refining. And the old self, no matter how loud it tries to be, has no power where presence lives. You are already in the new, even if the echoes haven't stopped. Keep tuning, keep breathing, keep remembering, because the frequency you're becoming is stronger than the one you're leaving behind. There is a silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full, like something sacred is about to arrive. In the world of manifestation, it's easy to believe that more is better. More affirmations, more visualizations, more declarations. But the most magnetic frequency isn't the one you repeat out loud. It's the one you hold in stillness, with no need to prove. Neville understood this. He called it the womb of creation, the place where assumption lives before it's seen, not shouted, not rushed, simply known. In this space, you don't try to convince reality. You embody it so completely that there's nothing left to say. Stillness is often mistaken for passivity, but stillness is not the absence of energy. It is the concentration of it. When you quiet the noise, not just outside but inside, the vibrational field around you becomes more coherent. And when coherence deepens, manifestation accelerates. Not because you're pushing, because you're no longer distorting the signal. Modern psychology supports this through the study of the brain's default mode network. During periods of intentional silence, especially meditation, this network quiets down, and in that quiet, the brain stops rehearsing the past. It stops anticipating the future. It creates space for a new self to form, not from memory but from pure possibility. This is the power of vibrational stillness. You sit, you breathe, you enter a space of conscious non-doing, and you feel not the longing for the end, but the certainty that it's already complete. There is no need to visualize for hours if your energy is anxious. There is no need to affirm if your body doesn't believe. But when you enter silence with the vibration of already having, the universe hears that more clearly than any spoken word, because the seed doesn't grow through sound. It grows through surrender. Beneath the soil, in darkness, in quiet, life begins. You don't need to fill the space with noise. You need to hold the frequency with reverence. Just 5 minutes of still coherence can shift more in your field than 100 rushed declarations. Not because silence is magic, but because in silence, you return to your natural state, an aligned whole, undistracted. And from that place, reality listens, quietly, and responds with the same clarity. Most people look for signs in the spikes, the goosebumps during meditation, the synchronicities after a powerful affirmation, the emotional high that says, "I'm aligned now." But these moments, while beautiful, are not what calibrates reality. What shapes your life is not the peak of your vibration, but its stability. Reality doesn't respond to your best day. It responds to your average. The emotional tone you return to when no one is watching, the identity you slip into when things are quiet. That's the signal the field learns to trust. Neville called this persistence in assumption. He didn't say to feel the end once. He said to dwell in it, to abide in it, not as performance, but as normalcy. When the state of the wish fulfilled becomes your default, life has no choice but to mirror it. Not through drama, through law. This is why intense spiritual highs often lead to disappointment, because if the vibration is not maintained, the signal fades. The field doesn't respond to fireworks, it responds to the steady hum of a tuned engine. Neuroscience explains this as emotional predictability. Repeated emotional states create consistent neural pathways, and those pathways form your internal GPS, guiding choices, behaviors, and responses without conscious effort. The more consistent the signal, the faster the shift. Not because you're forcing it, but because your system now expects it. So instead of asking, "How can I feel better today?" ask, "What emotional tone am I reinforcing?" It's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about checking in with your state, not obsessively but curiously, like tuning an instrument before playing a song. 3 times a day, gently become aware of your frequency, not to fix it, just to feel it. Because when you start living from alignment consistently, even in small moments, the world begins to stabilize around you. Opportunities feel less like surprises and more like reflections. Synchronicities feel less magical and more natural. Life stops being a series of reactions and becomes a clear, unfolding echo of your inner rhythm. Intensity can inspire, but only consistency creates. Let your vibration hum, not loudly but steadily. Let it become who you are, not just what you do, and watch as the outer world, with quiet precision, rearranges itself to match. You don't need to create your vibration. You need to stop contradicting it. This is the quiet truth behind all manifestation. It's not about emotional gymnastics. It's not about achieving a state through sheer force of will. It's about returning to the posture of consciousness that already knows, that already is. Alignment, as Neville taught, is not something you chase, it's something you recognize. There is nothing you must add to yourself, but there may be things you're ready to stop carrying. Outdated identities, fragmented beliefs, the tension of becoming. When these dissolve, what remains is the real you, the coherent you, the one who doesn't need to declare alignment because they are living it quietly, consistently from the inside out. Dr. Bruce Lipton's work reminds us that this coherence is not poetic, it's biological. Your beliefs, your deep felt identity, shape the very expression of your genes. Your vibration is not just spiritual, it is physiological. When your inner truth stabilizes, your body follows, your life follows. This is why it's never about intensity, it's about consistency, about living one coherent thought, one embodied emotion, one truthful I am at a time. You don't have to feel it perfectly, but you can feel it sincerely. Alignment is not about controlling the conditions of life. It's about allowing life to reflect the version of you that already knows it is complete. And from that place, you don't need signs. You become the sign. Tuning your reality is not a process of effort. It's like adjusting a radio. The signal was always there. But until you clear the static, the doubt, the force, the fear, the music can't come through. The moment it does, you remember. You remember that your vibration was never lost, only obscured, and so the journey stops being about reaching, fixing, or waiting. It becomes about remembering. You don't have to reach your vibration. You only have to remember it, and when you do, the world remembers you too.